What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. I have Shiv. If you guys
Hey,
haven't, what's up, Shiv? Shiv is a coach now. He helps people. He helps people in my mentorship. He's like a motivational speaker. He's like a Tony Robbins of Bye Bye Panic. I asked him to just hop on the channel and we could just talk about some things. Shiv, welcome, dude. I just wanted to let's go and get started. Before we do, Shiv, can you give like a recap of
yeah.
what we're going through?
So glad to be here, Shaan. Hi, everybody. I've been coaching with the program for just under a year. It was last year, 2021, somewhere mid last year, just before June, somewhere there. I recently just looked back at my own video there, and I was like, "Whoa, look at that guy!" And I feel like I'm doing even better now compared to then. And even then, I thought like, yeah, I was recovered, interviewing me and that type of stuff, right? But I guess when I said I'm doing better, is just we just get better after we learn what we learn in the program with handling life stresses, and genuinely, dude, we really do have an unfair advantage over so many people out there, just the way we do life, and anxiety or going through that, spiraling, that cycle, whatever it was a gift in disguise. I know a lot of people are listening to this right now, watching us. You're not feeling like this. In fact, you're feeling, dude, I would not wish this on my worst enemy, But look, once you really adopt the right mentor, you get the right information and you start applying and doing the basic things that we teach, you will recognize for yourself how awesome this journey is, if you come looking to learn. But in terms of recapping, it started with me with some blood test results that was read by a doctor that was very young, and the way how he put certain things. And then I still don't blame him. I myself was physically, emotionally, mentally tired because of some of the goals that I had in with regards to my business. And then with my wife and I, we were trying to have a baby. We had multiple tests that we were both doing. And we constantly had just back and forth trips to the doctor. And then I started to go to Dr. Google, and the overthinking started and the worry. And before you know it, I was spiraling, and it turned into other symptoms. It left from just health after I visited so many doctors and did so many tests and procedures and medications. Um, I focused inward a lot. When they told me nothing was wrong with me health wise, I started to go into the past and I started to worry about stuff that happened. I had all these ruminations and thoughts. So I always say I was one of the lucky ones because I got to experience all the symptoms: physical, mental, memories, emotions, all of it, and it at that point, it did feel like I live in hell. I even have some posts on our private Facebook group about it got that serious where, you thought that I thought that I was stuck. I thought that I was broken. I thought that it didn't make sense living life like this. And that's when I started to really search for the answer. Not that I was going to do anything drastic, but I'm sure there's some people on here that are listening to this that you probably know someone that did something drastic, or you might be there on the cusp of it. And we want to say to you all that there is help. You don't have to go there, and thankfully I just searched something up, and here it is. My mentor, he came up, right here on YouTube. And I started to listen to all of his free content. And it got me to a point where I felt like I was just about to go over the hump, but I needed that last bit of coaching to get over it, and that's where you came in, bud. So, of course, I was in the program, and you always say I recovered lightning fast. I just really wanted a way out, I really wanted to recover. So I was willing to apply, and I was willing to let you kick my butt and the other coaches that we had at that point. And I stayed consistent. And then, yeah, just I didn't make this thing. I did identify with anxiety. I didn't make it a problem because there was none, because you taught me the right mindset. And that was it. You eventually approached me to become a coach, and here we are today.
It was the coaches. I always knew you were good. Yeah, you were really good. I didn't know you had that much of a skill to like coach. I just didn't know, right? Because I guess it was like the student like relate. So I just didn't know your skill sets outside.
Right.
I think it was Kaylee. I think she was like, "Yo, like he could have some great potential."
Yeah.
What was your biggest symptoms for those that are curious?
physical was palpitations, and in terms of the mental symptoms, ruminations. There were certain thoughts that just were really sticky. You know, I did experience some sleeplessness, sadness, those things, you know, but what really got me was the palpitations and those thoughts.
Yeah. What was amazing about you, because I remember when you first were joining, I remember where I was sitting when we had a conversation too. I was in my parents' place at the time. And you were like, it was interesting. Like sometimes like a lot of people are like enthusiastic. They're like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you had that too. But a lot of people, like they say they want to do the work. And then, you know, we put them through the work. And sometimes they're, you know, it's a struggle, right? It's like, but you were enthusiastic about it, and you really were. And like, you always told me like, Shaan, I'm very coachable. Shaan, just tell me what to do. Shaan, I'm trusting you. That was one skill set that I thought was really, great. That I find rarer than, and I'm curious, do you find that rare often?
It's rare. It is rare. I think that trips up a lot of people, but I remember reading, and I think it's because I do a lot of reading that you and other people talk about me being this motivational speaker, because I tend to memorize quotes, not to be able to rattle off for people, to impress people, but just for me, right? Yeah. And one quote in particular that stuck with me was, the lesson you struggle with will repeat itself until you learn it. Yeah. And that's why, you know, and Einstein has a quote, if you do the same thing in the same way over and over and expect a different result, that's called insanity. Yeah. Yeah. So I know this wasn't insanity. I wasn't losing my mind. It was anxiety. And he also has a quote, the thinking you use to create a problem can't be the thinking you use to solve it, which meant that I needed to borrow someone else's mind who had solved this problem. I couldn't guide myself. I needed a mentor. And a lot of times folks have this ego about them that they're not willing to listen to someone else. And that's why I told you when we met, dude, I'm coachable. Tell me what I need to do. Because I always believe in following persons that have the fruit on the tree. And you had the result that I wanted. So why would I listen to folks that have all these opinions? You always hear me say the right to an opinion doesn't make an opinion right. And the internet is flooded with opinions, all kinds of nonsense. And I saw you had results. You had people that recovered. In fact, Caesar was becoming a coach. He was one of your first clients turned coaches. Yeah. And I looked at that and I was like, dude, if this guy could do this, then, you know, what if, you know? So
Caesar and you both, it's almost like, it's so weird because sometimes like there's some, I'm like, I don't even remember having conversations that much with you and Caesar. Like, you know, there's some clients like we speak with a lot. Like, there's like some where I'm like, are they okay? Like, are they good? Like, and you and Caesar were both in, but like you guys just like absorbed everything that was said and just executed. Like, it was almost like, it's weird if I have to say it once because I'm used to like repeating myself, but I was just like, hey man, just do this. And you're like, all right. And I never have to say it again. I kind of forgot about it. And like, you know, I'm like, how you doing? You're crushing it. And so it's pretty wild.
I think why it's like something I read that made me, I guess, just not question, but apply. The opposite of anxiety is trust. Yeah. And so I had to trust in my own body that it was healing, that there's just some nervous system things that I didn't quite understand all the science of it, but I understood when you said, do this, apply this thing this way, reset your mindset, refocus. I was like, okay. And something that I read, a story that I read, I don't know if you ever heard of this book, bro, because I don't know if we ever spoke about it, but it's a story of, and I used to really overthink things. I think one of the pitfalls is people overthink. You tell them to do this, and they say, okay, but what if I do it this way? What if that? Whatever, and that trips them up. But the book that I'm talking about is called the Horse, the Boy, the Fox, and the Mole. You ever heard about that?
I think I've heard of the book, but I haven't read it.
So check this out, right? There's a part of the book, an important part, a favorite part of mine, where it says, where the horse and the boy, they're in the woods, right? And the boy says to the horse, I can't see a way through. And the horse says, but can you see your next step? Yeah. And the boy says, yeah. So the horse says, then just take that. See, all of the time, I think we kind of just look at the future too much, the end game. We look at how long the journey gonna be, and we start to feel overwhelmed. But instead of that, what you have to do is just go, hey, I'm not gonna worry about that because that time will come. Each step will get me closer to that. So I don't need to worry about how far away that is. All I need to focus on right now is my next step. So if my coach said, do this, I was supposed to shut up, trust, and just focus on that next step. Yeah.
It's so interesting because like I remember when I first started this, I was like, I mean, we're obviously very careful, but like I was still like, one of my things was like, when I first started this, I was like, I don't know if I don't want to be naive into thinking that because it worked for me, it's going to work for everybody. And over time, what I have found is no, like there's some things that are universal, like this applies. And like now I feel like we're even more like, hey, just trust us, just do it. Cause I feel like we've done it like a million times. Like how many times we just got off of a coaching call for those that are listening for the mentorship. So, I mean, like how many questions, there wasn't a single new question that we've been asked. It was like the same question, different people, different stages, over like 150 times each.
Nothing is new anymore. I don't think anything surprises us anymore at all, right? Like what throws people in, whether it was, just bad marijuana or whatever it is, like there are different things that throw people in. You know what you said with regards to, all the questions. You know what I think we do as a coach, and I liken this to being a parent, because, my son is born now and all of this different stuff. And so as a parent and even as a coach, check this out, check this example out, or this analogy. When he cries, if he's in his crib or if he's crawling on the ground, instinctively you want to pick him up as a parent, and automatically he stops crying. Now what happens? It's not that he just wanted me to pick him up. It's because I'm changing his perspective. I'm taking him up from the ground level and picking him up to my level. And I'm showing him that what matters on the ground doesn't matter so much up here. And so you see, my role as a parent, our role as coaches has always been to change our client's perspective. And you see, they have to see that problem, that speck of dust, was not important in the grand scheme of things. So I think that's why all the questions that come, we always just eventually show them how to change that narrative, change that perspective. And that's our role as a coach. And that's why I think we have the results we have. Being a coach for like just on a year, I've seen hundreds of people recovered. I don't take credit for it. And I know you don't. You know that we work as a team, all of us coaches, but we get the job done. We really do.
Yeah. And that's why I always say, like, knowledge is one part, execution is one other part, and then setting expectations, because that expectations can bring things in perspective. Because it's like people can be doing things right, but if they don't have the correct expectations and the perspective, things that are going in their direction, they can misinterpret as, oh no, this isn't going in my right. Like setbacks are a great example. Setbacks are part of the journey. Symptoms changing, they're part of the journey. Often they're good signs. But because of the perspective, if they assume every setback means they're back to square one, if every new symptom is an indicator that, they're a prisoner in this, they'll sabotage. It's just like, no, you're heading the right direction. It's like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you have to go through some valleys. Doesn't mean you're not climbing up, right? And that's why I wanted to bring you on the channel, because I feel like there's so many mindsets that like, and that's what I learned, which was like, I disregarded mindset I didn't disregard it, but I didn't realize the importance of it as much until I really started coaching. And I didn't realize there was so many mindset things I adjusted on my own without realizing.
Right.
Now that, when you see people get stuck, it's often like a mindset thing. And, that people find creative ways of circumventing certain things. We were talking about that on the call today, like somebody who's circumventing things when they just need to do what needs to get done. And so I wanted your take on that. Like what kind of mindset things would you feel like people who are on their recovery journey would?
Great. That's an excellent question. I'll start with this. Sometimes people just go in this search of happiness. Like, I feel. We always hear them say, I feel, right? I feel like, and that right there is tripping them up. See, happiness is not the absence of problems. They think that as long as they have this anxiety problem or these symptoms, they can't be happy or they can't feel like their old selves again. But happiness is not the absence of problems. It's actually the ability to deal with them. And I realize that we're basically teaching people how to deal with them, how to refocus and go ahead and live life. Another mindset thing that we should adopt is we could change our narrative, like the story you tell yourself, right? For example, some people think that this is hard. Like I remember when I was over in Tennessee, when I had just fell in and I was out like Dr. Strange searching for the cure, you know, I was traveling all over the world looking, and I was by a friend I went to a friend's house over in Tennessee. So I left the island of Trinidad where I live, searching for the cure. And we were in a mall and they had this new machine that tests your hearing. So I always know you could test your eyes. I didn't know you could test your hearing. Turns out I had 20/20 hearing as well. Anyway, but I was telling the guy that I was hearing these, you know, noises and things like that because of, again, anxiety. One of the symptoms, a weird clicking noise and all that. And he's like, oh, it's nothing. So I said, well, you know, right now I'm just kind of going through some anxiety and whatnot. And he literally said to me, and I'll never forget this, oh my gosh, that's so hard. And you could see he felt sorry for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the thing. When we let people feel sorry for us, when we identify, when we think that this is hard, we could just try to give up and then lean into the nonsense that some therapists say, which is you'll never recover. So just cope, do breathing techniques, do this, do that, you know? So the narrative that I want to encourage people to change is this. I can do hard things and I like to do hard things. Change your narrative, change your story.
Yeah.
You know, I tell people, I said it today on the call, it might seem tough sometimes when you feel crappy, when you accept and allow and you still feel, you know, whatever it is that you feel, but you refocus and you do what you have to do anyway. You don't have to win all your fights, but you have to fight all your fights.
Yep.
Meaning you have to face every symptom. You can't run from them. You can't resist them.
Yeah.
So in other words, you don't have to always feel on top of the symptoms, but you have to face them all.
That's the biggest thing, right? You can't hesitate. You have to live. Life does not stop. You have to go. You have to, you know, and no, you're right. And you know, I get asked that a lot all the time. Like, you know, they were like, oh, but it's so hard, you know? And I'm like, well, what's the alternative? I mean, you know, like, it's hard, but it's worth it. I mean, it is, I never looked at, I always look at it as like, even if it's hard, it's still, you know, it's worth it at the end of the day.
Right.
Life isn't about only doing the easy things. You know, I'm curious, Shiv, about your mindset. I hear a lot of people say when they're coping with it, oh my God, I'm so glad I heard other people are going through this, not just me. I feel so much better. Did you ever feel that way?
At first, when I was in searching mode, you know, because we seek that assurance. That's assurance seeking, basically, because we're looking for clues or for hope that we're going to get better. Somebody went through this and they recovered. But honestly, my mindset was this. You know, there's a book out there that talks about floating, and I couldn't quite get the perspective. What does she mean by float? But eventually I understood this analogy. Like, let's imagine a bottle, an empty glass bottle, like, you know, message in a bottle that floats out in the sea. So there's an empty bottle and it's just floating on a pool. Then imagine it in the ocean. It's a lot more rough there, right? And then imagine there's a storm on the ocean. What is happening to that bottle? Well, it floats, but that water, that storm is beating it. It's going up and down. It's really just rough, but it continues to float back up. Now, imagine opening that bottle just a little bit and some water gets in. It still floats, but it takes a little longer to come back up. And then you open the bottle up a little more and more water gets inside. After a while, it could no longer float. Now, let's imagine that bottle is you and inside is your mind, because we're talking about mindset, right? It's not what's happening on the outside of us that affects us.
Yeah.
It's what we let happen on the inside of us
Yeah.
that affects us. And I think that was the mindset that I had to understand or adopt.
Yeah.
That's what float meant. It's despite all the stuff that's happening, don't let it seep in. Don't go so inward.
Yeah.
And don't think that it's just you. Anxiety could make us feel like we're the anomaly. You know, we're so unique that this is it. We're going to be put in the history books. Somebody is going to write stuff about us. You know, person just combusts due to high anxiety. It's going to be all over social media. You know?
You tell them, they won't even believe you. Like this guy.
You know, but yeah, I did seek that a bit, but then I stopped because I realized there's so many books written, there's so many people that have all of these Instagram stuff and programs out there, none that actually comes close to Bye Bye Panic. But you know, and I just knew that yeah, this was a real thing, but look, overcome. And you see, that's something else. People need to understand there's a difference between cure and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you don't have an illness, so what are you trying to cure?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Even though you feel sick, that doesn't mean something's wrong. And yeah, no, that's the biggest. And you know, there's so much. I think I'm a stickler for words, and you are too, because I've seen you on the calls, and when somebody says certain things like cope or manage or distract, or you call them out right there.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree when it comes to like you know, that water, that floating thing. It's pretty fascinating. Where I think one of the quotes that really stuck with me was no matter what's happening on the outside, keep stillness within. And and it's great that you developed that. I think everyone on the recovery journey has to develop that. I don't think there's a substitute. And that's what happens, right? I think people are just like bad, like they're not able to process their emotions and their anxiety well. And so any small thing that happens on the outside, or big thing, whatever it is, it makes them like fall over. And so I think what we do is we really focus on helping people how to respond, and so that they stay still, right? And like you know, Claire Weeks, you know, that book that you were talking about, she says, you know, you'll bend in life, but you'll never break again from the storm.
Yeah.
Right. And going back to, you know, that mindset question that I asked you about, you know, like, how did that make you feel knowing other people went through it? That kind of justifies what I was thinking about, because I feel like you and I were very much the same. I see a lot of people feeling better just knowing other people went through it. I never really felt better. I was like, okay, other people are going through it, but I don't want to be going through this. I want to be getting out. Like, I always felt like it was a little weird that I felt better knowing other people were struggling. I actually think one of the reasons why I created it was because I'm like, no, other people are going through this. Come on. You know, like, and so I just wanted to pick your brain on that and see how I thought. Yeah, man, that's amazing. What other kind of mindsets would you say for people that are stuck?
As you said, stuck, right? I think that they allow life to come to a standstill, but life continues to go on, as you were saying. And I don't think folks that slow down and stop doing things, in fact, they're not anxious because they're doing too much. I think they're anxious because they're doing too little of what makes them feel alive. And that's why we encourage them to go out there and live. Like, I did have the agoraphobia. I did have times where, like, there were phases, you know, where I just wanted to stay at home. Then I felt trapped. I didn't want to stay at home at a certain phase in my recovery. I was in the vehicle driving all over the place, like started with a full tank of gas, literally, and come home with an empty tank because I'll just be out there just driving, you know, because I felt like, yeah. So it's not putting anything on hold, not putting life on hold. That's a mindset that helps with refocusing, getting back to stuff that you would have done anyway. A question they should ask themselves is, if it wasn't for anxiety, would I have gone out? Would I have done this? Would I have done that? You know? And what happens is, I think we have this microwave mentality now, you know, where it's like we want it now. So even if we teach them the right skill sets, the mindset feeds the skill set, you get better in terms of a skill. Thank God, recovering has nothing to do with talent.
Yeah.
It's a skill, and a skill can be taught. And that's what we teach in this program. As long as we teach this and then you practice it, a skill gets better with practice, right? So we teach you right mindset that feeds into the skill set, they practice and they get better. And you get better and you get better. And eventually when stuff comes at you, because we know what life is the stuff that happens when you're busy making other plans, right? So that's why it doesn't make sense worrying and what if whatever comes our way, if it happens, we'll deal with it then. But it's dealing with it head on and gaining what we call core confidence. Because again, I think apart from the opposite of anxiety is trust, the opposite of it is confidence too. So in saying there and doing anything, not doing anything, you don't give yourself a chance to practice and a chance to earn confidence. Unfortunately, we can't go buy confidence in our store. It's earned. And how you earn it is by going and doing things. ACT. And ACT is an acronym, ACT. Action changes things. And that's what we encourage people to do. Despite how you feel, get rid of this microwave mentality. I want it now. And be okay with feeling uncomfortable for a little bit. That's what we have to recognize. That's what people have to learn. Not because they're applying and they feel still a little bit uncomfortable, they're doing something wrong. Nope. You have to kind of feel it to heal it. Go ahead, feel uncomfortable, but keep doing what you're supposed to do. Live life. Your anxiety is showing up to class, teach it. So I think we gave them a lot already just in this, and this is yeah, man.
Yeah. No, for sure. And everyone that's listening, like Shiv and I, we work with people that are typically like, they understand what's happening because we spend a lot of time helping them understand the mechanics. And then we teach them the response, and then, we tell them to live their lives. And so, for those listening in, Shiv is 100% right. It's about living your life while letting the symptoms be there, but also recognizing a little bit about what's happening, like understanding the mechanics too. And there's a bunch of resources there. I mean, I think this YouTube channel is one of the best. And yeah, so Shiv, if we want to wrap it up with anything that you'd want to, like, I guess, tell people that are struggling, because see, look, guys, Shiv has a really unique advantage. He's gone through it. So he's experienced everything. And he's seen a bunch of people on their journey and guided them too. So it's not like he's like recovered once. He's recovered like 1,000 times. And like every single pitfall you could, have, he's seen that and he's adjusted it in people. So Shiv, like what is the final thing you'd want to leave as a takeaway?
Yeah, sure. I've come to realize, and it might seem like I'm just kind of calling out all of you guys that are watching this here right now, that the common thing that happens with quote unquote anxiety sufferers is we might be highly critical people, mostly of ourselves, bit judgmental, challenges with perfectionism, and fighting with your ego a lot. And you see, in terms of your ego, that's why I think I recovered, because I was willing to listen. I was willing to adopt a coach. It doesn't make you weak in saying I need help. If you humble the ego, and ego is also an acronym, EGO means evil going on, right? But if you just kind of lower your ego and seek the help of someone, it's okay to say, hey, I did it myself, I recovered. That's okay. But do you really want bragging rights, or you want to live better? You want better quality of life. So, go ahead and get all the books. There's so many books that I did read, and I told Shaan, I read all of this stuff and I've been applying and I do feel better, but I was willing to admit I needed to get over that final hump, and so that's what I encourage everybody on here who's looking at this to do. Recognize that there is help. We've had many people that have recovered. Many people claim to recover just with the free content, but there's just that extra secret sauce in the program itself, and you become a member and you have access to our private Facebook group and our calls. And we have people out there just crushing it in life, man, because they were willing to listen to someone else and to take and accept guidance. And, this is just this whole journey you're all going through. It doesn't matter how long you might think you're in this spiral or cycle for so many years that can we really help you? Is it going to take me just as long to recover? No, you've been, reacting instinctively rather than responding correctly. So it doesn't matter how long you were in. What matters now is you getting the right information and the right help and applying now, and letting the process work for you. And that's what I would wrap up with here.
Dude, nailed it. I think the one that really doesn't trigger me, but like when people say, like you did it on your own, I want to do it on my own. And I'm like, why? Like the prize isn't recovery. The prize is going back to living.
Right.
Right. And so it's like nobody, even if you do manage to get out of it on your own, you don't win a prize. There's no cookie. There's no like trophy. Doesn't matter. And number two, I mean, what is it? Bragging rights? Like no one's going to believe you. Anyway, how many people,
Right.
even believe us? And it's just like, at a certain point, it's like, I always say, the prize isn't recovery. That makes recovery an end goal.
Yeah.
Prize
It's a consequence.
living. Yeah, it's to going back to living. Recovery is a consequence. That's where, the prize is having a second chance at life with a new level of gratitude and
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And last thing I want to wrap up, like Shiv, I know like you've been going through a lot of stressors in general, like outside stressors over the last year. A lot of the coaches have been kind of dealing with their own things, and yet we're still guiding people. And like, I don't want to say anything for you, but like, it's like, you can be going through some really crazy stuff and still like, a lot of people fear, what happens if there's a perfect storm of stressors that throws me back in the cycle. And now that you've had a little bit of time, since, you're a client and now you're, a coach, like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I've just been able to, as I said before, live life or do life better. I've been able to handle stresses. I really don't mind sharing some personal stuff, although once they're part of the program, they'll get to know us even better, right? Mm-hmm. But my wife and I, she was pregnant. She had difficulties with the pregnancy at a certain point. We had to get her off of the island, get to the US. My visa was expired. I couldn't get over there. I missed the birth of my son, because I just couldn't get across there. There were limitations and restrictions with travel. So that his first 2 months, I missed that. And that was tough. I had therapy on my shoulder. I couldn't even use this left arm for a while. That was tough. I had a household to run, a business to build. I had my responsibilities with Bye Panic, different things. Just life happens. I'm currently taking care of an entire household where my mom's retired and she doesn't have much to gain after her retirement. So I always joke around that I have 3 generations in my household. Mm-hmm. Myself and my wife, our baby, and my mom, and no one's employed, because we're basically self-employed as entrepreneurs. And then what I do here, but this stuff is going to continue to happen, folks. Last week there was someone passed away in our family due to an accident, 31 years old. How do you deal with that? Like, you just continue to live. You take it as it comes. But what I've learned here, I've been able to use those skill sets and that mindset and apply it to almost or basically everything in life, not just anxiety. And so that's what I mean by that unfair advantage, as you call it, that staff of wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. It's really about developing a new mindset. I think we evolve. I think we transform. And most transformations are painful. And that's what people do. They kind of shy away from pain, not recognizing that when you lean into it, on the other side of pain is, something amazing, really. Yeah. So yeah, man.
I agree. I've created a bridge from anxiety recovery to so many different avenues. And I think that's what it is. I think that's important too. For part of recovery is learning what you have here during the journey, and then, applying it to, other domains in life. And I think one of the biggest things for me was understanding that suffering is suffering. It doesn't matter whether it's real or not to the person that's suffering. And so, for me, I think, I went through so much of it that I became very sensitive to others experiencing it. And so now, and then, it's like, well, what do you do? Well, I mean, it kind of laid out my tracks for what I wanted to do in life on its own, just by creating that bridge. And so, it's a blessing, man. Dude,
it is. I think what it was, you realize I love acronyms as well. Even that word pain that I mentioned just now, PAIN, positive attitude in negative situations,
Yeah.
you know? And so, because I think we teach people how to uplift their attitudes as well and their perspective, as we said earlier, and so on. But folks, this is it. You found it. You don't have to look any further. If you are really serious about, you know, overcoming and focusing on long-term recovery, you know, give us a shout. That's what I'd.
Awesome. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Shiv, dude, so glad we did this. We should do it more often. And
Yeah, man.
yeah, for those who, you know, want to apply, see if you guys are a good fit, you guys can hit the link down below. We can take a look at a situation and be fully transparent if it's something we can help with. If not, we'll point you in the right direction. And yeah, so with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.